Today we have Paul Lenahan and Marlene Roberti as our speakers, who will be speaking about the Community Health Systems Foundation. Marlene has been serving as our interim executive director of the Community Health Systems Foundation since January of 2020. In this capacity, she's been responsible for assisting the board in setting up the foundation, as well as running the day-to-day operations. Prior to joining the foundation, Marlene was the Director of Business Development for the Community VNA, and she has 30 years of healthcare, philanthropy, public relations, and marketing experience. Paul Lenahan is the President of the Community Health Systems Foundation. His professional experience includes a 46-year career in banking with Fleet, Bank Boston, which became Bank of America, and Bristol County Savings Bank. Paul was also a Rotary Foundation, board member for 6 years and the past chair and treasurer of the Hockomock YMCA, where he served on the board of directors for 24 years. Paul is no stranger to Rotary, having been a past member of the Pawtucket Rotary Club. Please join me in welcoming Marlene and Paul.
Good afternoon, and thanks very much for having me. As a former Rotary member, I have to tell you that this lunch really brings back some very fine memories, and I see a lot of my friends and former clients from the Attleboro area here today too. I told Jeff I'm kind of a lousy joke teller. I used to be good, but I've lost my skill set. But
it's a low bar.
But he did say that. He did say that, Bill.
Your voice is very recognizable.
Servants here, he tells the good jokes.
So I don't know if you guys, in this day and age, if you believe in fining Rotary members, but that's what the Pawtucket Rotary used to do, and they were very adept at it. And my grandmother, once when I was singing Christmas carols, told me that I should really just mouth the words because I can't sing a tune. So when I went to Rotary, I started singing next to guys, and they were like, "Fine Lenahan, charge them $1." So you'd end up having to pay $1 to the Rotary till, and that's how I remember my good Rotary days. But I did love your opening ceremony, and I sang quietly to myself. So you're here today to hear about the new CHS Foundation that was finally launched in September of 2021, and it felt like a 20-month pregnancy. We were meeting as a small group for a long time while the approval from the Attorney General of Massachusetts, the Health Council, and also the Supreme Judicial Court of the state of Massachusetts put the blessing on the merger of Hope Health with the old VNA of Attleboro. And I know you heard from Diana Franchito, who was here back in February, I believe. Was that an in-person meeting, or was that in-person? Nice. So Diana obviously filled you in on the challenge of that merger and how well it's going, I'm sure. But we were lucky in that we basically finally launched ourselves, and we basically are focused on the health and wellness of the 13 communities that were typically the area served by the Community VNA of Attleboro. And there should be I never go according to the system. Thanks, Marlene. There should be a map up there. We do have a focus in the greater Attleboro area because that's what the catchment area of the old VNA was for sure. But we can go as far as Taunton, Easton, Franklin, Foxborough, Plainville, Mansfield. So we do have all those communities as well as the surrounding towns right around Attleboro. So again, the focus is very broad. It's to support the health and wellness of people living in the 13 communities that were served historically. And we intentionally wanted the purpose to be broad. Health and wellness can cover many things. And truthfully, as a result of the COVID challenges, we really felt that there were so many issues out there that needed to be dealt with that we wanted to keep it as broad as we could to give the organization the flexibility that would be needed. So how did I get to be president and treasurer? That's a really good question, but it was pretty simple. There were 20-plus members of the board of CHS and Community VNA that agreed to do this foundation and create this once the merger finally took place. I was probably the only one that had some foundation experience with the Roberti Foundation, and I don't know if folks are familiar with the Roberti Foundation, but it operated for many years through the auspices of David McIntyre, and today it's still functioning with his his sister Elizabeth McIntyre, who runs it now and is still very good to many of the organizations in the greater Attleboro area. So when I encourage people to say, you folks don't realize how much fun it is to give other people's money away, I said, you know, there should be a good group of our 20 board of directors that might like to become part of the foundation. Anyway, long story short, 4 of the former members said we would go forward and work with the new foundation. And Carolyn Blake Divert has been a key person on that 4-person committee, kind of like a quasi-executive committee, but we haven't officially named ourselves that. Elise Servant, who is also well known in this area, Chris's wife, is also on the board. And then Lisa Piscatelli from the Interfaith Collaborative as well. So they were the carryovers to this new foundation. And they've been very instrumental. Now, Marlene, who has been fantastic through our first months of operation and also leading up till then, basically is only an interim director because of an arrangement that she has with Hope Health and a severance arrangement. So we're fortunate to have Marlene, and she's done all the things that I can't do, like PowerPoint, sometimes coordinate the Zoom meeting. I can do it, but it's very challenging for me comparatively. And also, she's been very thoughtful in terms of figuring out what we really want to do. But we really only have Marlene for the next few months, 2 months, on a part-time basis. And so I'm saying to this group, because some of you may know and you'll hear about it, but we're going to be looking for a part-time executive assistant type person, somebody that could help us coordinate things, and not everything that Marlene's done, because she's done way too many things and done a lot more.
Operating.
But,
It's the TV, it's not.
but let me read to you the board of directors, and you may know some of them. Again, so we have Lisa Piscatelli, Interfaith Collaborative. I'm sure many of you know her. Carolyn Blake Divert, our clerk. Kevin Bowman, who's an orthopedic guy. Anybody need a new hip? He's the guy. Yeah, Ed, you should talk to him, yeah. Amanda Blunt, who's with the Literacy Center. She's been very beneficial. Anthea Gomes, who works for Pricewaterhouse?
No, Deloitte.
Deloitte Haskins and Sells. She's in their consulting group. She's been a great member. None other than the great Kathy Hickman. And truthfully, Kathy was a board member for CHS for many, many years, had retired from the board, and Kathy's been fantastic. She's a very thoughtful person. She always does her homework, and she did say she might have a lot of conflicts with organizations in the Attleboro area because she knows all about everything that's out there practically. And I said, Kathy, you can't have conflicts with that many organizations. We need your vote on some of these things. Jack Lank, well-known Chamber of Commerce Director. Juliana LaRusso, who Juliana runs the Lake Pearl operation, the old Luciano's at Lake Pearl. She's the general manager. Her dad is Jerry LaRusso, and Juliana's been a good member. Kate Mangiarotti is also on our board. And I mentioned Elise previously, Elise Servant. And then Liam Timmons, who's a wealth advisor in the Attleboro area. He's been a good member of our board as well. So we're still in the formative stages. And I basically don't want to talk forever because I told Marlene I'd give her a few minutes. But what do we have up there, Marlene? Organizations, yeah. So we did our inaugural grant just recently. And matter of fact, the checks are in the mail right now. We said we would like to do up to $20,000 in grants, and we put the word out, and we have a mailing list and a website that Bank of America has helped us with up till now, and Marlene's been instrumental in seeing all that happen. And we were lucky enough to receive 30 requests for proposals for grants. Again, it was for COVID recovery or COVID, how to go forward under the circumstances. And again, back in December, things kept changing. This is when the grant went out. I mean, we thought we were maybe done, and then Omicron reared its ugly head. So our approval process just took place a week and a half ago, and we basically have awarded 25 awards, $454,000 in grants out of 30 that were applied for a total of $550 was the requested ask. Some of the grants just didn't quite fit our goal right now, and we also, as a foundation with roughly, our numbers have changed with the market volatility that we've seen so recently. We've floated anywhere from 18 million to about 20 million in assets. So we basically have to spend or give away 5% of that amount typically each year. So our goal was to probably get to 400 to 450 in that range, and we did that with the help of the full board. I also thought we would have a gifts committee at some point, but then in the survey of the 12 board members, either 8 or 9 of the board members said, no, I want to be involved in the gifts committee. So we may still see community members who would like to be involved in the gifting decisions, and ultimately they would recommend to the board of directors the process that we've been using, who should receive grants as requested. So again, the announcements have been made, and I suppose we can put up all the names. Many of you will know these organizations, and hopefully the few that we did say no to, in many cases we said hopefully in future rounds we will clearly hope that you consider applying again if the reason what we decide to do in the future makes sense to you and your organization. Marlene, have I left you anything to say?
No.
No? Okay. Well,
I can talk a little bit about round 2, so.
you want to talk about round 2? Come on over, yeah.
So we are going to, everybody can hear me, you need me to, okay. So we are going to be issuing, the board is going to be issuing, you took my, I need one of the
round
other.
2?
The board is going to be issuing a second round of grants in the fall. They want this round of grant to be a little bit more impactful. The first round of grants was $20,000, which certainly is going to make a big difference in the community. But the next round will probably be larger grants to fewer organizations, probably in the range of $200,000 to $300,000 in total. They're working right now on a strategic plan to try to figure out what the areas of focus will be. In round 1, it was very vague. Just tell us how COVID impacted you and how we could help you to recover from that or move on from that. So we got everything from building adjustments to, gee, we lost a lot of money last year and we can't go on without it, to COVID supplies, to scholarships for campers. So we were sort of all over the place. The next round, I think the board will decide to be much more focused. Again, each year moving forward to reach that 5% requirement, the board will need to probably do 2 rounds of grants. They don't have to, but that's what they're talking about doing, one in the spring, one in the fall. I'd love it if all of you would like to stay connected to the foundation. You could visit us at our website at chsfoundationma.org, and there's an opportunity to join a mailing list to find out about future rounds of grants, and then we also have a Facebook page. Questions?
Perfecto, yeah. We're happy to answer any questions. And again, one of the things we're also considering, because we are in that interim phase with a transition to a new executive assistant at some point in the next several months, we hope. But if anyone knows a name of somebody that might be interested, please communicate with Carolyn. I think Carolyn Blake-Dibbert can receive anybody, any names that you might have, any suggestions. We have also toyed with the idea, because we've really made significant grants already this year, with perhaps just focusing, depending on our area of focus is, on an LOI, a letter of intent to organizations. I had not heard of this before, but some of the more talented people on our board brought this up and said, you could identify 5 or 6 different organizations that you would like to solicit to see if they might have an interest in applying for something. We haven't made many of the big decisions. For example, capital campaigns. There's always someone with a capital campaign. We haven't made big decisions on that about whether we're going to allocate a certain amount of dollars for capital campaigns or continue to do one-offs. All of the people that did apply, as Marlene referenced this past round, in our inaugural grant are eligible for going forward grants. There's no time limit on when they can come back to us. Many organizations do have time limits on, if you go 2 years in a row, you can't come back a third. At this point, we have no real requirements in that area. So, again, if any of you have questions, if you've got, yes, is that?
I'm not too sure everybody understands where the money came from.
Is that important? Okay, so, how do we get so much money and where did it come from? So over the many years, the VNA had raised a lot of money, although it wasn't as much as I would have expected, and it had invested it very well. I was chairman of the investment committee at the end, but the market has been very kind to us the last several years. When we first got going, we thought our target would be about $10 to $11 million And when we were funded initially, it was about $18 million. A lot of that was due to the market. Where did the money come from? In the merger of Hope Health, I don't know if Diana got into this with you, but we transferred all of our real estate, which was 15, maybe $20 million worth of real estate to Hope Health, and also $5 million into something called a CVNA fund. And anyone who had a specific purpose, trust, for example, something obligation that was specified when they made the gift to the community VNA, that money went to the community VNA that Hope Health now administers in Providence. And they're still in Attleboro at 10 Emory Street, of course, but that's where the money really came from. The stock market was really kind to us because, again, I never really thought we'd be at, we were at 20 million, a little over 20 million at one point in the late fall, right around December sometime at the market peak. When was the market peak, Amanda? I can't remember. December? But, you know, and then when the portfolio gets to be that size, I mean, you really, you know, 1%, 2% swing, it's a lot of money on a daily basis, right, Marlene?
Yeah.
We look at it almost every day, and it's been all over the place. Jerry?
Was there also a thing where the money couldn't go to Hope Health because it was a nonprofit and the profit, the merger, so you had to spin it out?
Hope Health is a nonprofit.
Hope Health's a nonprofit.
But the board was very dedicated to keeping the money in the community.
Oh, okay.
That's the point, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marlene. That's a good point, Jerry. So, yeah, and by the way, the approvals and the documents that approved our inception spelled all of this out. They spelled out the $5 million in cash that we provided to Hope Health. They spelled out that the remainder would be used to form a foundation. So the blessing, and we needed the blessing of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts too, which all this took a long time with COVID. Is that Chris back there?
It is. First,
Chris, I didn't even notice you there.
Paul, congratulations to you and Marlene as well. I've observed from afar the things that you've done. Your leadership is, you collectively, has made a huge difference in the Attleboros. And having been working in an institution where grants were in part of that, it's significant. Now the question, what accountability would any of these 25 recipients have to you at either halfway through the year? Because obviously some will reapply next year. Are there some specific?
Yes, there's one specific requirement. The organizations had to agree that they would spend the money in the next year and provide to us by April of 2023 that they spent the money and this is what they spent it on. You know, the purpose that for which they asked. So that's a very good question.
No, and very honestly, I think people start off well, and
Right.
next, you know.
And as the grants get bigger and are not as vague as they are, you know, with just the COVID relief, the reporting requirements will get much more specific, I think.
Believe it, I one time asked a person for $100,000, a friend of mine and a friend of the organization, and he said, "You know how hard I had to work to make this money?" I said, "I think so." He said, "I'm going to make you work just as hard to get it." So my point is, you're giving away money to worthy organizations, but they also need to prove that they're worthy of your confidence.
That's absolutely correct. And again, any foundation that does this wants to know that the money is used as requested and have accountability, you know, to its founders.
As, not to mention the IRS has little regulations that make sure they're done for 501c3 purposes.
Right, exactly. We're having fun with it. It has to be a 501c3. We also, just as a reference, we did say initially we'd like to have organizations that have a minimum of $100,000 of revenue. And I have to admit, we got a couple that didn't quite meet that because of COVID-related issues and fundraising and the lack of support. But we tried to work around that, and I think we made some good decisions in this group. And you know, all in all, it went pretty well. I know it's past your 1 o'clock. Oh no, it's almost 1 o'clock. Yes, sir, Peter.
So I assume the 5% is the income to the trust each year. You know, it's going to be.
It's not the income. It's the total of the assets under management at the end of each year, 12/31. Right. And it, you know, that would include income and capital gains.
It's conservative because you figure you're going to have more than that.
Right. And Congress just recently passed a law, or you know, it hasn't been approved. Congress, I say, the House of Representatives passed this, along with a bunch of retirement-related things. And they want to see if foundations should start to spend 7% of their assets. So that hasn't been approved or even taken up by the Senate.
Back to spending, I mean, yeah, there was 20 years ago when we had the dot-com thing, there was a whole big thing because of margins, and And spending formulas back then that were too aggressive, 8, 9, 10%. So they weren't too conservative. So.
Yeah, and truthfully, I mean, we can spend more than 5%, and it's over a period of years that the measurement takes place. It's over a 5-year look back, so we could do more or less. And truthfully, I've always been an advocate that, hey, if the market has a downturn, and this was my pitch to the board, the market was, up and down the whole time we've been involved in this, and I said, the market will work itself out over the long term, and this is the time in the down market, perhaps, when people need us most. So I encouraged everybody to think big and really try to have a great inaugural first round to make people aware of who we are, what we can do for them, hopefully going forward, and we hope to have a long-term impact and really benefit the residents of the 13 communities that are served by so many good not-for-profits in our 13 communities and even elsewhere. We could have a Rhode Island-based operation that provides services to Massachusetts residents in our area, and they would be eligible as well, too, just as clarity. Are there any other questions? Marlene, thank you very much. You're absolutely right. Marlene, we could have done it without you.
Paul, Marlene, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of our afternoon. This past year, children's literacy has been one of our initiatives, and as a token of our appreciation for the two of you being with us today, I am pleased to present to you a children's book that in just a moment is going to be signed by you and then donated back to the Attleboro Children's Library on your behalf. So I do appreciate you being here, and with that, meeting adjourned.